Look, thanks Jane for the intro. Yeah, a bit of an esoteric topic perhaps for a Nuffield Scholarship, but hopefully, it really is my intention that I think everyone in the room can take some element of this away and apply it to their business, and I hope that's the case. So yes, we're in McLaren Vale, South Australia. We're in the wine industry. My wife and I started this brand in 2010, and prior to that we'd had quite long careers with other people in the wine industry. We met together in McLaren Vale about 20 odd years ago in a winery. So Emmanuelle's from France, she's trained as a winemaker, and my background's in the vineyard side of the business. So we met in a winery. She's been living in Australia for 20 odd years now, but we've always had the opportunity to go back and forth to France, do vintages over there, really interact with the fine wine end of the market in that place. That can be a bit of, a lot of people come back from that sort of thing a bit starstruck, but we don't. I come back to McLaren Vale and to Australia more generally, and man, I tell you, the missed opportunity, or the untapped opportunity to do something at the pinnacle in Australia and in McLaren Vale's there. Our brand is set up to be an emblem for our region. It's why we label like we do. The region gets prominence on our label, and then we tell a story about how we interpret it. So in terms of my topic, I wanted to go and have a look at, I've got this feeling that there are things we do really well in agribusiness. I'm going to talk a bit about wine. I want you to when you hear the word wine, take it out and plug in your industry and just see where these things might be applicable. What do we do well as Australian agribusiness? Well, we're amazing at turning this amazing natural capital that we've got, land and water and sunlight, and turning it into incredible products. We're really good at production. It tends to be where farmers and agribusiness put all of their focus and energy. We're really besotted by production. What we don't do as well, in my belief, is we don't inspire the customer to pay the value of all of that work and energy and sweat and agony that we go over to produce these amazing products. We don't inspire the customer to pay a premium. So I got to thinking, who does do that? Who's really good at getting a premium out of their products? And maybe I could go and look at them. So luxury brands were a pretty obvious example of that. So what I did was to go and look at luxury brands and decide, okay, what do they do when they talk to their customer, and how does that differ from how we do it? So jewellery, fashion, cars, scotch, watches, fine art market, Paris and London and Napa Valley, looking at wine, racehorse industry, the thoroughbred breeding industry in New Zealand and in Ireland. Probably the best meeting I had, Pearls in Broome in Australia. It's one of the few Australian luxury brands. Retail architects, and then a lot of sort of direct-to-consumer type focus. We'll see a few examples of these as we go. So the objective, this first sentence comes straight out of the Wine Australia strategic plan, and that is to increase demand and the premium paid for all Australian wine. I'm pretty sure if all of you took your industry and plugged it into that, it's a pretty strong objective for all of us. So go look at the luxury brands. How do they communicate with their customers? What might be transferable to us as winemakers? So what's a luxury product? There's plenty of definitions. Some of these things will be in some definitions, some not in others, but really I distilled it down, looking at all the literature, something that's beyond necessity. It's what we do. We make relatively expensive products that people don't need, and then we've got to find a customer that has an emotional attachment and wants to engage with us. These are the list of attributes. The two red ones, have a think about them. I reckon they're really applicable to agribusiness. And have a think about your business. If you could do those two things in your business, what will that change for you? So high quality, cost of entry. So there's the production side. You've got to have a high quality product. Price is disconnected from the cost of production. Now that's a pretty amazing place to be. So I saw brands where their gross margin on products was 900%. So pretty impressive. Rarity and scarcity, whether that's real or perceived, is a real part of these brands. Craftsmanship, authenticity, history, heritage. I think as farmers, often we look at these sort of things and say, oh, you know, if someone's made it all up and it's just a marketing spin. It's not. The successful brands have absolute integrity in their stories and their history and their product. Amazing service, so customer service is part of the whole experience. And then the final one, which I think we'd all love too, is absolute control over distribution, which gives you control over price. So you don't get discounted in a bottle shop. There are no Nuffield ties in the Gucci shop, and I kind of thought that was relevant because I think as farmers we do focus on production, and we look at things like luxury brands and think, oh, that's not for me, you know, that's all a bit of puff and wind, and you know, I don't see that applying to my business. We're pretty pragmatic, but I say, so what? There are still elements of this. You might not aspire to be a luxury brand, we don't particularly. But we're really happy to take principles and elements of this and plug it into our business. Kind of got to get over ourselves a little bit and accept that other people really do have an interest in this stuff. How do you take 2 years of your life and distill it down into 15 minutes? Best way I came up with was to just pick 3 really common themes of luxury brands that I saw that we might be able to apply. So number 1, and probably the most important for any business, is they understand their own unique brand identity. So what are we? What's our history? Who's our company founder? You'll see that all the time. You know, you've got Coco Chanel. They still talk about her at Chanel in Paris. So she's really key to their whole story still. Craftsmanship, your company purpose is really important as being not only for the customer to understand, but for your own business and your staff and everyone. If you understand those things, you're in a much better place than someone who doesn't. So here are a few examples. This is purpose. What's your purpose? This is Coolmore Stud in Ireland. Some people might recognise this. They want to be world class in breeding horses. That's their stated aim. So everything you see there, from the reception, the landscaping, the statues of their champions, the private museum, everything points to that purpose. This is Krug Champagne, one of the most coveted champagne brands in the world. This is another element that I found really interesting. So they, you know, you often hear people talking about giving the customer what they want. These guys say we have our own identity and the customer gravitates to us. So that authenticity is what's bringing people in. Next one, heritage and stick to the cues. So Hermes is a luxury brand out of Paris. Their history is as a bespoke saddle maker. That was their origin story. Everything they make a whole heap of different things these days, but you always see references back to this kind of, this origin. So the horses are on everything, their leather products, they're hand stitched, all of that comes back to their origin. And finally, absolute focus about what they're doing and what they won't do. So this is Linneys. This is a jeweller in Perth. They'll make you anything you want, but you have to choose something that's made broom pearl, Argyle diamond or Kalgoorlie gold. That's it. That's all they work with. And Alan Linney said to me something that I took away that was really good. We make originals, not prints. And that's their absolute focus. Bit of a tool. Sorry, we'll go back one. Second theme, luxury brands understand the emotional drivers of consumption in the customer. So what they'll talk about are the emotional desires of the customer, and they'll talk to them. So they won't talk about the product, they won't talk about the price, that it's cheaper than anyone else. They won't talk about necessarily the origin, they won't talk about what it does. They'll talk about things like, what does consuming this product say about me as a consumer? So they want to get right into the emotional trigger of the consumer and target that, not so much product. And I think as agriculture, we talk about product. You know, it's protein this, it's pH that. The consumer wants to know what's it do for me. That's nice, but how do you know what emotion you're trying to touch? I saw one really good tool. We've applied this in our business already. There's a concept called customer-led design, which is really where you get consumers to help you build products. So you take customer knowledge and really have them as part of the process of building a new product. I've seen people now that are using that similar technique of interrogating customers in a particular way to try and get to the core of what their emotional needs are. Why are they buying something? So we've done that in our business. We've had a company interview our customers, our current customers, prospective customers in the wine trade. We haven't changed what we do, but what we've been able to pull from that are which elements of our story resonate with our key customers. So we've dropped a few and we're concentrating much more heavily on some others. This is a good example of that. I've brought this one back to an agribusiness focus. This is Lattissima. This is a milk company in Brazil. So they identified their customer, mothers buying milk for their kids in supermarkets. And then they built their brand imagery and their focus around that. So this is a mother or a cow and a calf. The stated emotions of the mothers buying milk in the supermarket were things like nurturing and protection and that sort of thing. And so they've tried to recreate that kind of emotion in their branding. And I think it's, they've had a really successful business. It's pretty powerful stuff, very smart. Third common theme, luxury brands demonstrate absolute consistency in their image and their actions. So they know their purpose, they know the emotion in the customer they're trying to touch, and then everything they do, they wrap that brand identity in stories that just keep aligning with those things all the time and reinforcing it. And they never deviate. So Paspali Pearls, they talk to me about, we don't sell pearls, we sell a dream. So we're not selling a product. Some examples of this. This is an ad campaign that's been going for 20 plus years. So, you've probably seen it. The emotion here really is this idea, it's giving someone license to have an alternative. You're not buying a watch for yourself, you're buying it to pass on to your kids. Now, some people might be doing that, but others it's just giving them an opportunity to go spending. But they're the emotions they're trying to touch. This is the founder's notebook at Krug Champagne in France. It's a couple hundred years old. He wrote this diary. He was an older guy, he had a child, and he wrote this diary as the vision for the business so that if he died, the son could pick up the diary and go on with it. They found it in the attic, and now it's the whole core of their marketing and their imagery. So from the colour of that diary and the case, that burgundy colours through all of their imagery, the script that's in there, everything gets distilled back. Their whole story comes back to that one book, and you can go to Krug Champagne and they'll sit you in front of the book and make you taste the wine. It's pretty compelling sort of stuff. Iconography, I think, is really powerful. So sticking to your knitting, and what do you do? This is Chanel, consistency, and that little black dress is an icon in the fashion world. It changes subtly, but the overall configuration, it's just Chanel recognisable to anyone who's got an interest in fashion. Does anyone know this brand? There you go. So, that's the ultimate, the absolute ultimate in consistency of branding. You don't even need to know the name or see the name to know the brand. They're a colour. And finally, the other thing that I've seen that's been really important to some of these brands are the way you tell stories. So Louis Vuitton, one of the girls there, was telling me that story making beats storytelling. So they're getting the customer to build their own stories within the context of the brand. So this is a customer visit. So these people were flown up from Melbourne to Paspali Pearls. I was lucky enough to go on this trip, taken out to dinner the next morning, go out on the big mothership, see the Japanese technicians taking the pearls out of the shell, reseeding them, have lunch on the boat, dinner, fly up via another farm on a float plane, see the design team in Darwin, and then I'm sure they take them out through the shop on the way home. But these people all go home and sit in dinner parties in Melbourne and tell people about how you make a South Sea pearl and why it's so expensive. So that experiential thing, really, really important. It's important for a business like ours, which is direct to consumer. So we need to engage our customers and help them build their own stories around our business. Finally, again, this is a great one of consistency of image. This is Harlan Estates, one of the top Napa producers. They have a waiting list for their mailing list. Bottle of this wine you pay for now, you don't get the wine for a year and a half, it costs you $750 a bottle. And so their stated aim is to be at the pinnacle of wine in a world context. What I took from this photo was, everything they did was polished. It was amazing. So you can see there, that path, there's oak leaves everywhere. Someone's been out and swept that path before I turned up, just before I got there. And the whole experience was like that. It was just curated all the way through. It was really impressive. So, what are my takeaways that you might be able to apply to your business? One, understand yourself. What's your unique proposition and your unique brand identity? Accept the customer is buying more than a product. Yes, they're buying a product, but they're buying more than a product, okay? What they're trying to get is that they're trying to satisfy a particular emotion, so it's your job to find out what that is and try and help them satisfy it. So seek to understand the customer's underlying emotional drivers of consumption. Customer-led design might be a good way to adapt. You might be able to adapt that technique to try and understand some of those customer emotions. And finally, maintain a consistency of image. Okay, your language, your stories, everything's got to mesh with your brand identity and the emotions you're trying to touch in the client. And a good way to have a look at that, I found, is you can conduct a really simple audit. Walk through your business. What story are you trying to tell? Is there anything that's not meshing with that story? Can you tell a high quality wine story if the rubbish is blowing over the fence from the main road out the front? All those things count. It's really important. And finally, just another thing, while I've got a captive audience, it's something I'm really passionate about. As Australians, and certainly as Australian agribusiness, I think we undersell ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I've stood at a wine event in the US and had American producers come up to us and go, will you guys just get out from behind that bench and go out there and tell that guy how good your wine is, because we're really good at just sitting back. The American guys will be out the front, other side of the desk, walking around. We need to have pride, confidence in our businesses and what we produce. I think that's essential to success, and I think if we can all do that, we'll push agribusiness forward a lot more quickly than we are at the moment. So thank you.